Rock and roll so we can get back on the phones and hammer out dials. I got Jesse Breaud. It's Brew, right? Is that how you say it?
Bro, it's pronounced bro, like BRO.
But you know, he's been in the business what, 3 years now, man?
This is so it'll be the end of my second year.
Okay, so not even
right now. So I started August 2020, I believe.
Wow. Okay. I thought you were in a little bit longer. Well, he hit Hall of Fame last year. So, you know, pretty new, and hit Hall of Fame in his first full, you know, calendar year. So clearly, you know, he knows, you know, how to, you know, work the business and everything. You came from a construction background? Or is that what
I was industrial construction pipe fitter.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, you know, all those refineries that are out there, like I'm sure you see them driving around. I mean, Southern California, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
We used to do like shutdowns on those things where they'd shut them down for, you know, a couple of weeks, and we'd redo, you know, one section of them, stuff like that, industrial construction work.
Gotcha. Okay. And, you know, clearly nothing to do with life insurance, but, you know, came into the business. I'm sure it was quite the transition. But, you know, so we got the pleasure of having him on the call today. So I'm just going to let you rock and roll and, you know, ask questions throughout, but, let's just, you know, start with, you know, what was it, you know, that, you know, made you come over here, and like, what was the transition like coming from a, you know, construction background to, you know, life insurance, which is, you know, not construction. So let's tell us a little bit about your background, how you found us, and like what you're doing to, you know, hit the results that you're hitting, you know, because clearly you're doing something.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So for me, like, I've been around Family First Life. Like, you know, my sisters and stuff, they've been staff at Family First Life for a long time. So I've known about Family First Life. I've known about insurance. And I actually, when I was 19 years old, was going to get my life insurance license, and I started the class and everything. And that was while I was going through my apprenticeship. So in order to become, you know, a pipe fitter, you have to go through a 5-year apprenticeship. And I was already in like my second year of apprenticeship. And I was like, I'm not going to go like join like a new industry while I'm in the middle of school. Mm-hmm. So I kind of put it off. I didn't realize, like, you know, how beneficial it was, but I did keep in touch with like Sean, Mike, and stuff like that. And he would text me periodically and be like, hey man, you're too smart to be broke, and stuff like that. And it was always kind of weird, because I was like, dude, there's nobody over there is rich. Right. And then I started seeing like people started getting integrity deals, and like people were actually making a lot of money. And that's when it kind of changed my opinion. I was like, oh, this looks like a little bit more than just a regular like 9-to-5 job. So I started getting interested in it. And that's when I kind of decided that, first of all, I was fed up. Like, you know, when you work a 9-to-5 job, you have a boss that's going to be usually dumber than you, who's going to be telling you, you know, all kinds of crazy things to do. That's, you know, and on top of that, you don't have a lot of freedom, especially the type of work I was doing. It was 16 hours at least. We were working daily, 6 or 7 days a week. So there's not a lot of freedom. And, you know, in construction, you have to move wherever your jobs are. So I was in Southern California. I'd be in Northern California. I'd be in the Bay Area. They'd send us up to Oregon. Then I'd go to Nevada. So like I was all over the place chasing these jobs, because once you're done with one job, it's like, where are we going now? And you never know where you're going to go next, you know? Mm-hmm. So I got married, and I just decided, like, at that point, you know, for my family, I wanted to be able to do something that I could spend more time with them. And so I started looking more into Family First Life. And that's when I figured out, oh, you can make, you know, enough money to support your family, and you don't have to travel across the United States to do it. And so that's when I decided to try it out and see how it would work out.
Right on. Now, did you start part-time and then transition into full-time? What was that transition like?
No. So the way it worked out was I got injured before, I got injured in November of 2019. So I went on, in California, there's like state disability, which is actually, it's like $1,200 a week. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, I was like, this is the perfect time to get my license, you know, because you got to go through the study class and all that stuff.
Yep.
And so I went through the exam prep course and everything, and I was on, disability at the time. And then I just transferred. I was like, there's no way you can go work a 16-hour job or do the type of work that I was doing and then do this part-time. So I gave it 100% right away, and luckily I had some mentors and stuff like that, people like Zach Twardowski and Easton and all them to like help me make the transition, because it is scary at first.
Yeah, it's completely different, completely new compared to construction. But yeah, I mean, it stinks you got injured, but that situation to help you get into this field definitely worked out in your benefit for sure. Because like you said,
Absolutely.
trying to do it part time, working 16 hours, that would be hard, and I'm sure that you would be a little tired after 16 hours of construction. But what so
Right.
talking about, obviously getting mentored by Zach and Easton, two of the top salespeople in the company. Zach used to write crazy amounts of business. And what, like, as a new agent coming into this business without any experience, like what was like the best advice they gave you in regards to leads and scheduling, and like what was it that you learned from them right away to set you up for success as a new agent with literally zero experience coming into this?
I think some of the things that like Zach and Easton did teach me were a lot in the beginning was basically about lead flow, because that was something that I struggled with in the beginning, because I was like, look, I don't want to buy a bunch of leads from these companies. And so I had to get over that. I would call Zach and he was like at first he was like, look, dude, if you're just going to complain, like I can't help you. Luckily everybody was doing Zoom dials at the time, right? And so, because this is like right in the middle of COVID.
Yep.
So luckily I got to get around people who were dialing the same leads as me and watch them book the appointments. And that kind of taught me like, oh, okay, the leads don't suck. I just suck right now. So that's something that I could work through, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like a natural thing though, for you to want to blame like the leads or want to blame something else for the reason why you're not able to do it. But then when you see other people do it, it kind of shifts your mindset where you're like, oh, okay, they're doing the same thing that I'm doing. I just need to get better at this, or I need to be able to hold their attention for longer than 2 seconds on the phone or whatever.
Yeah, that's a huge tip. So I hope everybody heard that. So, your mindset is everything, especially when it comes to booking appointments, man. It doesn't matter what lead you're dialing. If you see other people booking the same types of leads, and you're not, you need to change something up, change your mindset, change their flow, like you said, keep them on the phone longer than 2 minutes. And then what are you doing now for like your lead flow? Like what's
Yeah,
to hit your Hall of Fame and everything?
absolutely. I think that was right around the time where this is before we had instant leads, or It might have been like right as soon as we got instant leads or something like that. But I remember, because those game time leads were like $27 a piece or something like that. So they were pretty expensive.
Yep.
And for the same type of quality. So me and Zach, because where I was living, there wasn't a lot of people there. So I would have to travel to California and Oregon and stuff. So me and Zach kind of came up with like a game plan for how I could get enough leads every week. And what that required basically was for me to have like a revolving 5-county area that I would run. Like I couldn't run the same county the entire week. I'd have to run, Washoe County, and then I'd travel into California and run like 3 or 4 counties there. And then I'd travel to Oregon, and it would just kind of revolve around like 5 to 6 different counties so I could get enough leads. And what I would do is I would go into the CRM and I would just get as many internet leads as I could in that area, preferably, sometimes there would be like, 60 instants and like, 51 months for the internet leads, right? And so you could get enough of those leads, drop them in a phone burner, and then I would just book for a day out, right? Some people like to book 2 days out, but like if Monday is my dial day, I would just book for Tuesday. And I would try to get like 10, 12 appointments for Tuesday. And I'd go run all those appointments in, Roseville, California, or wherever it was. And then Wednesday, I would hop back on the CRM early in the morning, grab whatever leads I could in whatever area, around 100 to 150, drop them in there, and then I would dial for Wednesday, right? And so that's how I stay consistent, because the area that I was, it's a very low population. So I had to do that. It depends on where you're at in the country.
Gotcha.
I also started doing like mailers too, where I would mail, I would it was like a buy per lead thing for mortgage protection. I wouldn't get very many of those back, maybe like 5 or 6 of them a month, but those would like substitute everything else that I was doing, and then I also started doing the Mail Pro final expense mailers, and that kind of helped out too. So it's kind of like everybody always says, like, you need to work all the leads. And at first I thought like everybody was just like, excuse my language, but full of shit. And I was like, yeah, right, dude. You guys have a secret lead source,
Yeah.
and you just don't want to tell me about it. But that's the case. It's like, yeah, you got to kind of work everything and just it's going to take you a few months to really figure out a good game plan,
Absolutely.
Do you find that's the case with you? Like it took you a few months to like really get it dialed in?
Dude, it took me a few years to get my lead flow down to where I could hit Hall of Fame, man. I mean, now it's like it's completely different out here in California because I completely got up and moved after living in the same spot for 10 years. But yeah, it takes a while. It's like trial and error and figuring it out. And just, investing in different leads and not being afraid to invest in them. But yeah, it takes definitely a couple months and just figuring out, what works best for you. And just at the end of the day, having enough leads, like you said, just having 40 game time leads isn't going to get you the numbers that you want to get. You got to have at least, 100, 150 a dial day just to make sure you can get those appointments. But for sure. But what are you doing now to hit, what's your lead flow like now? Obviously, that was the beginning. So clearly, new people, if you heard that, get you 100, 150 internet leads and just dial like crazy. But what's your lead flow like now?
So, it's still similar. Now. I think the only thing that I'm doing a little bit different is I'm doing mortgage protection mail drops I'm just doing in one county. So, because I moved to Arizona, I moved from Nevada to Arizona, and just for family stuff, not for anything to do with the business, but I moved here just on a family decision. And so there's this county, it's called Pima County. There's like one city there, Tucson. It's not like a huge spot where like there's millions and millions of people there, but I'm doing a mail drop there for mortgage protection. And then I'm also running internet leads there, right? So I'll get like 100 to 150 internet leads still a week.
No doubt.
And then everything else that comes in on these mortgage protection. One of the good things about mortgage protection that I like a lot is like a majority of the time, it's people that are more financially stable than you're going to typically run into on, internet leads or final expense. That's number one. And then number two, it's a lot of times it's a husband and wife, right? And so I feel like the premiums are a little bit bigger on mortgage protection. So you don't have to like, in order to hit your, if you have like an issue paid goal or submit goal or whatever, you don't have to run as many of those appointments all the time, right? But another thing though is you can't run as many. Like if you're running mortgage protection, sometimes those appointments, especially if it's like an older couple or something, like you might have to be in that house with them. If you're doing it virtually, you might have to be on the phone with them for like 2 or 3 hours in order to explain to them like all of the stuff that has to go on and find something that they actually qualify for. And not 3 hours, but like, you know what I mean? Like an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours to get, explain how everything works. So during that time, you could have ran 3 appointments on internet leads, so.
Gotcha. Yeah. That mortgage protection definitely takes up a little bit more time and whatnot. But so you're still getting a ton of internet leads. What's your, cause I know a lot of agents work those. What's your, a lot of people complain about them, but what's your mindset when working them? What do you think your numbers are? Like how many you have to get to how, like if you get, are you just doing instances 1 month? So like if you get 100 of them, like how many do you expect to book? Like, obviously after doing it for a while, your numbers, like what's your numbers on those?
Yeah.
I need to work more internet leads as well. Cause I get them, here and there and we'll sell them and then not, but what are you doing on that? What's your number on it?
The numbers kind of vary a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like, but I feel like it's around like 10%.
That's
appointment ratio. So like if I get 100 leads, I could book 10 appointments.
That makes
sense. If I get 150, I could usually book like 15 appointments.
Gotcha.
There's a new lead type. It's the instance with the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
Yeah. I saw them for the first time and I grabbed like 4 or 5 of them. But I haven't like worked them. Tell me more.
I haven't either, but there's an agent on my team he swears by them. He says that they're the best leads that he's ever gotten. So like I said, it kind of varies from like where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
like, geographically. Um, but what I do is, so EverQuote's a good resource. I'm sure you guys have
Okay.
heard of them. Smart
Mm-hmm.
Financial.
But what are you doing all in-home still? Are you doing like with internet leads? Are you doing like telesales?
Yeah.
What are you doing on that front?
I try to do, I try to just do as much in-home as I can.
Yep.
I tried to do phone sales for a little bit, but my ADD is too bad, dude. I can't sit in an office for, 10 hours in a day. I can barely do that on dial day, like on
Yeah.
dial day, it's just, that's my worst day of the week.
Yeah.
Um, so I just hate being in an office, man. I know it, like, for me, I'm like, I really wish I could, because it's such a good opportunity. Like, you don't have to be in a specific location. Like, I don't have to drive to Tucson every day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who can do it, like, it's such a blessing. You know what I mean? Like, you can
Yep.
pretty much work from wherever you want in the world. Like, Dan Trinati's basically traveling like South
Yeah.
America and selling insurance. Like, that's so awesome. But for me, it's not an option right now. Maybe in the future it will be. But
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it. I tried to do it, dude. I put some effort into it, but I get too frustrated. Um, so yeah, so I'm just
It's a
doing
different
all
beat.
in-home stuff.
A little bit about, you're building a team, just tell me a little bit about that, what you're doing on that end, and then we'll open it up for questions, since my internet is a little unstable here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so for me, building a team is like something that I felt like right away I started realizing, like, oh, that's a good way to make money, right? Is like to build a team. And so that's how I was building a team at first. Like, I was just trying to like recruit cold market people. I was like running ads on like all these different sites and just like telling people about the benefits of family first life and all that stuff. And then I realized, like, maybe like a year into it, I was like, I'm going about this all wrong, because I really wasn't growing like I wanted to. Like, I was hiring agents and stuff, but they really weren't doing a lot. And like, it just felt like everything felt like kind of fake a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I realized, like, I had to do, and this is talking to Zach and a lot of other people, is like, and even Zach Luffles, I talked to him too. And he's like, dude, why did you get into this? And I had to think for a second, because I kind of forgot. And I was like, well, I think the reason why I got into Family First Life was because I wanted to put my family in a better financial situation than we were previously. And I wanted to have more time to spend with them. And Zach was like, well, dude, if that's not what you're doing, then you've kind of like sold out on your dream, basically, And I hope that makes sense. And so like it was the same thing for like other agents too, is like I was hiring them based on like the benefits of working at Family First Life versus like what are they actually trying to accomplish? You know what I mean? Like, are you frustrated at work? Are you not in a financial situation with your family that you want to be? Are you not able to make enough money or whatever, right? And like I had to change my mindset from hiring people from like a transactional standpoint to really caring about like them, and like also showing them, like, knowing how much it changed my life and changed the trajectory of my family, financially, not only financially, but just like I have a lot more time to spend with my family than I ever would have working construction. So thinking about it from that perspective, and then like bringing agents on board with that in mind, like, I guess, everybody says like trying to find your why and stuff like that. Like, that's basically it. It's like, what are you struggling? Is there something that you're missing in life? And if we can help you, it's kind of like almost like in home a little bit. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I know it was a little bit weird, but I
So
hope that makes sense for everybody.
it does. It makes a lot of sense. Before we was there anything else you wanted to ask, Josh, or we want to open it up for questions?
If you can hear me, I say we open it up for questions. My internet's
Okay.
going out and we're at 25 after. So I'll open it up. Paige, if you want to handle that.
Okay.
And, I'm going to mute out just because it's going nuts on me too. So
Okay,
I apologize,
no problem.
guys, for having a weird internet. But Jesse, thanks for hopping on, man. I appreciate it. I got a lot.
Thanks, Josh.
I
Appreciate
know
it.
everyone else did, man. Keep crushing it, dude. I'm going to mute out. I'll let
Thanks,
Paige
buddy.
open it up for questions.
Anybody got any questions? Is there a question? What's your weekly lead budget?
it changed over time. It kind of really depends on where you're at in the business, I think. Now that could just be my personal opinion, but for me, when I first started, I knew I had to spend at least $1,500, and that was, you know, when we just had instant internet leads. I knew I had to spend at least $1,500 a week to hit the goal that I wanted to hit, which is 30 appointments every week, right?
Right.
I think it kind of depends on, you know, like we were talking about earlier, just really depends on what lead type you're running and what your goals are. But if you're trying to hit 30 appointments, I think anywhere from like $1,000 to $1,500 a week is probably a good starting budget. And then if you have to adjust it from there, then you'll know where to go. But I would lean more on the side of like, I would lean more on the $1,500 side than on the $1,000 side at first, because if you're not getting enough leads, then it's just kind of a downward spiral. A dialer and appointment setter. Okay, wait, hold on. There's another question. Do you do a combination of
have you
virtual?
used a dialer or appointment setter previously?
Yeah, I have. I think it's a good idea to have if you're, depending on how many you're trying to run, if you're trying to run the same amount of appointments, like let's just say you're running 25, 30 appointments a week, and then you hire a dialer to dial the same amount for you. I don't really know how that really benefits you, except it gives you, you know, time to do other things, but also dialers don't book as good of appointments as you would book. Right. So you're going to have a lot more no-shows. You're going to have a lot of weird appointments that like don't end up being anything when you have a dialer, I think. And so I do have a dialer every once in a while when I need to run more appointments. Like if I'm going to run like 50, 60 appointments in a week, which sometimes I'll do just because I want to like, especially if you're trying to hit Hall of Fame, you want to boost up your issue paid numbers or whatever. I'll hire a dialer to book me an extra, you know, 5, 6 appointments a day, or dial for me on my run days so I can, you know, run appointments and not have a dial day. And then I'll still dial in between them. Because like I said, I think your appointments are going to be the best appointments. Because if your dialer could book as good of appointments as you, you know, they're going to be very hard to find. Some people have them though, you know, like, I think like, depending on where you're at.
I've used one before too, Jesse, and didn't have a good experience. Now I do have actually an existing client, but she's focused on dialing current clients for annual reviews, and I'm still dialing my new leads. So that's going very well. But what it's done is it's taken me from 30 to 45 appointments. My goal was to get more. So like you said, if you're trying to do it for that. So we've got a question from a new agent regarding product knowledge. When you're first getting started, Jesse, I'm sure you were like most of us and you felt like you needed to know all the products. What did you find to be the case?
Yeah, I did. I felt like really I didn't know what I didn't know, what I didn't need to know, and what I did need to know. And that's what felt scary at first. But I think you just have to trust whoever's guiding you. And like, you're going to hear all the time, people are telling you like, don't worry about that. And they're telling you that for a reason. Like, people want you to succeed. Your upline, whoever hired you, your friends, your mentors, everybody at this company wants everybody else to succeed. The problem is your brain does this weird thing. And it's not just with products, it's with a lot of things, but your brain does things to tell you you're not ready to do something, right? So one of them is, well, I don't even know what I'm talking about. So how can I do this? And that's a very logical excuse, but that's, you know, an objection that you're giving yourself to not run appointments. I think as long as you know the difference between term and whole life, right? Whole life is permanent coverage, lasts forever. The price never goes up. The death benefit never decreases, passes on to the beneficiary of choice. Term is for a specific period of time, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. As long as you know the difference between that, you got all the ammunition you really need. And then your job basically is to figure out what the client needs, right? And then go through the whole, I mean, I'm sure you guys have like the client suitability sheet or whatever, the financial inventory. Go through that. And then what I would do, because I was working with Mike Schroeds at the time, I would just call Mike Schroeds and be like, hey, Mike, got a 52-year-old male. He's a smoker. He's taken, lisinopril, he's taking this medication, he's taking this, he had a heart attack 4 years ago. What can I do? And then Mike would always tell me what to do. And then from that point, I just went and I'm like, okay, so the company that my specialist is telling me to go with is Americo. So let's do this. Or it's, Aetna, because you have COPD or whatever, and once you do that, like for me, it took me a long time. They say like within your first 100 appointments, but for me, it was like within my first like 500 appointments. But I finally figured it out, and I was like, oh, I actually know underwriting better than this guy now, So, but
it
yeah,
does come with time. It comes with repetition. And as long as you've got an upline, and in our case, we're very fortunate with Coastal. We even have a hotline. So if your upline's not available, you have the hotline to call.
The hotline. Yeah.
We got one more question before we'll wrap up. We don't want to keep it too long, but Rose is asking if you're building a team, and do you have like staff to help with like your pending business or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think then that's a good question. For me, I got staff pretty early on. Like I hired an assistant to help with mainly like agent stuff. So they used to hire, like, I feel like back in the day, like people want to tell you to get staff really, really early on, because back in the day, it was really important for them to get staff because they wrote all paper applications, and then they had to have somebody scrub it, and then they had to have somebody check on pending and like do all that extra stuff. Whereas you can pretty much do all that stuff yourself now, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It does help to have a staff if you like have to get a hold of America for whatever reason for them to wait on hold. But it's not a super necessity for your own stuff. Where a staff comes in helpful for me, and this is just my personal opinion, is if you're building a team, there's a lot of stuff that like new agents have to go through before they can actually start selling insurance, right? So if you can pass all that administrative stuff off to your staff, as far as like contracting, making sure that you follow up with them and make sure that they're doing contracting, make sure they're getting through the boot camp. Sometimes they call you and they need help with the boot camp. Sometimes they need, paperwork or whatever, or something's getting held up or their license isn't, whatever. If you have a staff to handle all that stuff, so that way you don't get frustrated with them in the beginning, and then they come to you fresh, like a fresh agent that's ready to start writing business, I feel like that's the most helpful thing you could have, a staff for.
I agree with you, and I'm blessed to have that. Okay. We're going to wrap it up so everybody can get back to dialing. And if, we do appreciate you, Jesse, getting on here, and Josh,
absolutely.
Thank you for as long as we had good internet.
Yep. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries.
Thanks,
Team
guys.
effort.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your dial day.
See y'all.